Before the interview gets started, I just want to make my listeners aware that if you have young children or maybe personally have sensitive ears, be aware that there's just a little bit of adult content in this interview. It's a very good substantive interview, but just be aware that there's a few portions where there's just a little bit of what you might consider adult content. Now here's the interview. Welcome to 2016 Presidential Candidate Interviews. Today I'm interviewing Mike Fahl. He's running in the Cherry Picker Party. Hello, Mr. Fahl, and welcome to the interview.
Hi, how you doing, Lee? Thanks for interviewing me.
Hey, no problem. How are you doing?
Good this morning. Have my coffee. I'm ready to go.
All right. Well, thank you for participating. Let's give the listeners a chance to get to know you. I'll ask you some pretty easy icebreaker questions. Can you describe your family?
Yeah, sure. Well, I have no children of my own. I'm a 44-year-old heterosexual man who lives with his cat and currently my nephew-in-law. And I live in Salt Lake City. I have two parents who live 20 miles away. I have an older brother, a gay older brother who once had two boyfriends for 10 years living in Seattle, and I have a younger brother who is married and who raised my two nephews-in-law as well as my 12-year-old niece. And he lives fairly close in the Salt Lake area as well. And if I didn't mention I had a cat named Lily Puppy.
Okay. Describe your employment and your work experience.
My employment, my work experience. I have spent a lot of my adult life on the streets selling artwork. In Seattle, in Los Angeles, in Brooklyn. I do that quite often for large stints, normally during summertime. And I do occasional galleries, occasional shows as a painter. But for the most part, I sell on the street. As far as traditional employment, I've basically moved laterally through a lot of major businesses like eBay. I've worked for Amazon.com. I've worked for JetBlue. I worked for a sub-company to eBay called Half.com. I've laid hardwood floors. I have been a cartographer for an engineering firm that gave me a government secret status for the maps pertaining to locations, military locations. But I have always, so it would seem, not attempted in any of these cases to climb up the corporate ladder. I've always moved laterally through the company, analyzing companies. I've also started my own businesses in the past. There's currently one called Clown Cash. It's a dormant business, but and it's a multi-level marketing company. So I have been involved in that whole process, which is another issue about where our country's going financially. And I think that gives you a general overview.
All right, next question. What are your hobbies and interests?
Well, I like to listen to and argue philosophy with people around the world, English speakers around the world in group or one-on-one formats, which includes politics. I play chess sometimes. Very rarely I'll play a video game or two to get a feel of that. Of course, I love YouTube and listening to people's individual expressions very much. As far as other hobbies, I juggle, I play drums. I used to hike and camp and be very recreational prior to a physical disability that hampered certain things. But I do like to swim as well.
Do you have a favorite place to eat out?
That would be between the legs of Jewish Ukrainian women, I would say.
Do you have a favorite junk food?
Favorite junk food? There's a hot, spicy Mexican chip called Takis that I really like. Otherwise, in general, I mean, I do occasionally, since I'm past my vegetarian days, I will go to Wendy's every now and again and grab a burger.
Okay, favorite TV shows and movies?
I don't watch much TV, network TV. When I do, it's generally news, Bill Maher, Jon Stewart, comedy shows, or politics. And as far as, old TV shows, I don't know. I like American Idol. I like those singing competition shows. I think those are okay. And movies, my two, I guess, of my favorite movies are Groundhog's Day and Fight Club. I thought those were tremendous flicks. Of course, there's many more. Maybe Terms of Endearment is also one of my favorite. There's several, of course. That's kind of a good question there.
Okay. And the final one. Name a song you would consider a life anthem, a motto, something that represents who you are.
Oh. How about I sing a verse and let them guess? It's okay. It's what have they done to the earth? What have they done to our fair sister? Stabbed her with knives in the sight of the dawn, tied her with fences and dragged her down. It's a Doors song. It's when the music's over. I shouldn't say that's my anthem, but that's my political anthem. That, as well as the new Hazley song, We Are the New Americana, high on legal marijuana. So perhaps those aren't personal songs, but they're my political songs.
All right, now we'll get into the more serious questions. Why are you running for president?
Why am I running? What triggered my running was hearing about a 15-year-old named Deez Nuts, who actually got his application in, and he never got his committee number signed up. So, but he was still able to register with the FEC. And Lee, by the way, I think you may be interviewing people who don't have, because my understanding, not to backtrack here, is there's 1,177.
There's over 1,200 last I counted, over 1,200.
1,200. Okay, you've been on there more recently, and the majority of those, there's a lot of a lot of parody accounts, right. People that are registering for the sake of registering, and then there's people that actually have their committees set up. Right. They're packing their campaign, and that those are legitimate corporations with proper treasurers and custodians and so forth. And so hopefully you're interviewing the ones that are registered, where the committees are registered, and that they're appropriate candidates, meaning that they're lawful candidates. But why am I running? I'm running because when I saw Dees Nuts run, and then I saw Trump and Sanders and kind of the field start, I thought of all of the things and all of the politicking and argumentation that I've been involved in and listened to, and I thought of what I think are major crises in the country, and I thought, yes, I could do this, I should do this, and I am astute enough to do it, so I registered. But yeah, there's some definite things that could use some reworking in our system. So that's why I'm running.
What abilities would you bring to the office of president?
Well, I'm acute, astute, and I'm I feel as if I have an approach that allows not only logic and problem solving to play a role in how I think, but I think that my associative powers, my innovative powers, and my philosophical postmodern deconstruction and moral reconstructive philosophy would bring something fresh and new to the office that hasn't been seen in a president in some time, I believe.
Are there any presidents you have a favorable opinion of, who have aspects of their presidency you would like to emulate?
Emulate. Prior to my time, there was JFK, John F. Kennedy. And John F. Kennedy, actually, right prior to his assassination, started distributing legally his own new version of money, and actually was able to distribute his own version, competing with the Federal Reserve note. And so I emulate that. I also like his approach, how he broke the wall relative to being Catholic, and broke into the presidency regardless of the stigma of his religion. I am in Utah. I am not Mormon, but I'm very aware of Mormons for people that were putting Romney through the grinder about his Mormonism. I thought that was a particularly interesting time for comparisons to JFK. Other presidents, Thomas Jefferson, Lincoln, they get a pass on everyone's good side, I think, for the most part. I like Bill Clinton. In terms of his general economic approach was fine, but I also am quite upset about his passing of NAFTA. So I guess it's kind of negative there to speak of Bill Clinton, but I like his general approach. And Theodore Roosevelt, I found him to be bold, not unlike Trump, actually. And I liked his manner of being as a bold man. And I think he moved very confidently with that boldness into the presidency. So I would like to emulate that, certainly.
Are there any presidents you have a less than favorable opinion of who have aspects of their presidency you would not want to emulate?
See, that's a tough one. I mean, Nixon's fraud is I almost want to poo-poo on Nixon because he got busted, but it appears, with the exception of maybe Carter and Reagan, that every other president since Nixon has done something a bit scandalous. And so I think it's just a matter of avoiding scandal, but putting forth part of my platform is a regutting of the ethics of how we consider our aristocratic candidacy, our nobility, if we have any of that left. But to answer your question, it's Wilson, Woodrow Wilson. He passed the 1913 Federal Reserve Act, and so I don't want to emulate that in any capacity. And I guess Nixon. I'll throw Nixon out.
All right, Nixon's always a good, safe choice for that question. Are there any functions of government you'd like to decrease or abolish, and why?
Okay. Yeah, certainly. Our government traditionally, in my lifetime at least, has moved imperialistically around the globe. And I think, I mean, maybe with the exception of Carter didn't seem to be joining this imperialism. And so I would like to decrease that. I would like to decrease substantially, very strictly, congressional pay. I think Congress should, the individuals in Congress should only have the average pay of any individual in their state's constituency. They should not be considered more wealthy, and they should not be considered less wealthy than anyone else that is representing that state. So as far as a decrease, I would actually like to see a decrease in politicians as pocket greasers, as money launderers. I would like to see a decrease in that, where I would like to see it replaced with statespeople, like statesmen, more people that are there for policy instead of moving with money. So a definite strip down of money. These fucking assholes that are maintaining the congressional powers that be via the exchange of money, in lobbying, in passing of bills. I think the Young Turks, TYT, I don't know if you've heard of them, they're on YouTube. They have something called the Wolf Pack, and a lot of people, including Sanders, are trying to strip down the money that is affecting politics. And I think this is directly related to our Treasury and our Federal Reserve System. As far as other decreases, decrease or cease gerrymandering across the country, make that illegal. Military spending, as far as spending money on production of like tanks and planes and the actual production of more less modern technological artifacts. like tanks and planes and battleships and submarines. Maintain maybe a lower production of those without depleting finances towards DARPA. DARPA being the technological head of the military. So I would want to maintain that. Other things, decrease the influence of the Federal Reserve System. I could go on about that. I think I line up with Ron Paul as far as the negative effects of that. And as you can see me referencing, by the way, these individuals, the cherry picker platform allows me, kind of like a burdock seed, to pick, or like Velcro, to pick the best of any policy in any camp, in any time that I think would be applicable to apply to this nation at this time to make us function much more optimally than we have been, that we're used to. And so that being said, I do think I agree with Ron Paul. I guess two other things to mention as far as decrease, unless this will be brought up at some other points, would be a decrease or a ceasing of corporate personhood as it's registered legally in our law structure. Ending money as free speech, going against the Supreme Court decision that allows that. So I'd like to see that. So I think I've covered that question.
Next question.
Sorry to drag off there.
Right. Next question, mostly related. Are there any functions of government you'd like to increase, or is there anything not in existence that needs to be added to government?
Well, certainly. Yes, auditing of what we currently have as a government, and not only auditing but transparency. What I think we need is a Department of Government architecture. I use that loosely, and disclosure. And what this department would head would be a completely internet, worldwide accessible 3D, if you want it in 3D, a 3D depiction of all of the hierarchy of our government, every single department, every position in every department, the name of every person in every department, and this would also include not only, like Ron Paul also instituted, a transparency to the Federal Reserve. He could not implement entirely what he wanted, but he did get a transparency. So occasionally we get to see Janet Yellen, as we saw Bernanke prior to his departure, in the boardroom discussing policy. But I would even want it to be more extensive than that. This particular department, this particular transparency, this particular website disclosing not only the departments and the people in it, but it would disclose the transactions specifically, and the amount of all transactions that every department, from the Department of Education to the Environmental Department to Water, Agriculture, Guns, Firearms, every single extended part of the government would have this disclosure and make this accessible, three-dimensional, easy to navigate or as easy as possible to navigate, but every single associated company that is contracted with the government would also have to have this type of transparency and this type of disclosure. And by doing this, I really not only want to focus on corporations that contract with the government and banks in the banking institution at large, but I want to focus very heavily on the monies that the Federal Reserve does not disclose. You can easily find where the Federal Reserve within the last 8 years has spent over $1 trillion that is unaccounted for. When Congress presses Greenspan or Bernanke or their subordinates, the boards of the Federal Reserve, they don't always tell you where this money is going. And now maybe this is going to some space station. Maybe this is going to some super secret development area, something like that. Maybe it is, right? Maybe that's an inside secret government department. But I think that needs to be disclosed as much as possible as well to retain the nation state that we do call America. I still believe we need to protect our state secrets. But that's what I think in general there. As far as other increases, nothing particular comes to mind other than greater advancements for, like in Los Angeles, the aquifer is out, right? William Shatner wants us to pump water from Seattle down there. Las Vegas wants to give up water or sell it while they're fighting for their water already. So I think government technologies in desalinization, as well as maybe adding something more to the body politic in terms of helping the environmental agency in that respect. I think that needs to be added. I think maybe new approaches towards immigration should also be added. I think Trump did highlight that, and that should be a point of policy and contention during this race.
Describe your stance, your approach to taxation.
My stance on taxation, I believe in an equitable taxation. People under, a certain amount really aren't getting taxed, and rightfully so, by the government. I think that's below $25,000 or $30,000 as an individual, or $50,000 as a married couple. That's already kind of a given. So that's okay in general. My stance towards taxation, I think the income tax is something to possibly consider abolishing and move everything strictly into a sales tax. But while we have the income tax, I think that corporations should be paying the same amounts, if not more, regardless of whether they're international, whether or not they've previously gotten exceptions from the government to not pay, such as Exxon, GE, Apple. I'm sure there's several more companies that have a complete pass on paying any taxes. I believe Apple roughly was estimated at, I think it was $7 billion annually that we would have been able to take to them. So my policy is relative. It's basically a flat tax across the board for all corporations. As a matter of fact, part of my moral reconstructive approach, because that is my approach, is a moral reconstruction of certain facets of how we do business and we do government, would require a taxation of corporations, and that's a redefinition of what it means to be a citizen as opposed to a Social Security insurance holder. But that's another topic. So I hope that answers the question to some extent without obscuring it too abstractly.
That's fine. Describe your stance on abortion and the whole pro-choice issue.
Well, I personally don't have kids because I have in my past had two abortions. I have a little bit of dissonance with that personally. As far as some dissonance between my personal feelings about it compared to my notion of what should be a political standard. And so the political standard is, I think that choice, really pro-choice, is a choice that the individual makes prior to having sex, right? You choose to engage in that risk, right? But if a woman is pregnant, I would argue for her autonomy to have an abortion. I would rather have a woman who feels raped or inept as far as raising a kid, especially if she's, perhaps a young teenager, not even a legal adult, right? I think if they feel raped by the fact that they have to keep a child and would have the gall and the nerve and be so upset as to give themselves some back alley abortion, that they should definitely have medical an ability to go in and acquire an abortion in a medical capacity. And so I am actually pro-choice and secular when it comes to policy with abortion.
Next question. It's about the military. What role should our military play in the world?
Well, the military, quite frankly, I think the military is one of our greatest welfare systems. Not in its entirety, but I think it serves as a means of it solves a problem for a lot of people who don't know what it is they're doing with their life, so they want to grant it to national service. As far as the military in general, in times of where we're not at war, the people that are involved in the military should be training military personnel, should be showing them what the capabilities that a human has still, but prior to impending automation and displacement of the human workforce in general across the board, which will be another one of your questions down the line. I hope we talk about that. But the general purpose of the military outside of the time of war, I think, should function as international humanitarians We should be down helping Haiti. We should perhaps be asking the sovereign countries and leaders of sovereign countries in Africa if we may partake in their country in times of war. Like with Syria right now, these undeclared wars that we have. I think that we should be involved in being ready to invade, attack, but we're in an international ecology. I think the general paradigm of our imperialism and our warring practices as America needs to be curtailed, and yes, military spending, like I had mentioned before, should be part of a decrease. So hopefully we function strictly as nation-state defense, ally defense, but otherwise it will be situational.
Next question is on immigration. How do you handle immigration and border security?
Well, as I had mentioned before, Trump's wall idea seemed to sting a lot of people who felt like the country went towards allowance of immigration. Now, I actually am more of a humanitarian. I liked it when I could pass up to Canada in the past without an interview, a stop and go and passport interview, and the tensions that are now in place between the U.S. and Canada. I enjoyed that freedom to pass. I think that people passing borders, crossing borders, is generally fine. But I also think if we're going to move into identification of every individual on the planet in terms of thumbprints, DNA, blood markers, photographs, identification, and put them in the database worldwide with every other human that our technological information gathering community and AI at large is trying to acquire, then if we're going to submit carte blanche to impending future technologies of identification, then yes, let us, if not a fence, I'm certain we can come up with other means of identifying the very individuals that are crossing the border. And really, it's a matter of identification and tracking of individuals who cross the border and stay in the country too long. And while we have immigration laws that allow us to deport people, I say let's maintain that standard. I do like Obama's pathway to citizenship approach. I know some anchor babies whom, or even illegals who the DREAM Act is crucial for. These are people who came over because they had a sibling that was an appropriate anchor baby, but they themselves came over not as citizens. They don't speak Spanish. They speak perfect English. They were raised here. And these individuals should be able to have the benefits of citizenship, but not without going through what we would call the traditional exam for citizenship. But then again, our general populace, our general student populace, whom are citizens already, who would have a hard time passing that, probably because they got a B- in civics. sorry if I'm drooling on. I think I'm not, but so essentially, I don't know. I would consider different options. If we need new fences, if we need a wall, there's an idea. But to be honest, I'll keep things kind of status quo until I would know quite how to approach that problem.
Okay, race has been a big issue in the news the past few months, past year. How do you perceive the issues of race and discrimination in America, and do we still face challenges?
Yeah. You'll get pundits like Ann Coulter saying that the big issue in America is a white-black issue, and this does stem. This is an inappropriate description of the melting pot that is the genetic melting pot of the U.S. With regards. I mean, we have Native American blood, we have Eskimo blood in our genetic mix. We have East Indians, we have Asians, we have Polynesians. We have Viking. We have Polish. We have everybody here. We have everybody here. Right. We are a melting pot. Race is, but the real race tensions have to do, I think, with some growing pains that America still has with regards to how the established, predominantly white, perhaps Jewish, Zionist-controlled propaganda machine works. And I say that as in terms of network television, control of which movies are being made in Hollywood and which TV shows. I think propaganda plays a huge role now, but I do think that the white-black issue needs to continue being fettered out. This is why I enjoy YouTube. This is why I enjoy conversations, argumentation. I think that intelligent, acute, or astute black individuals need to be involved in the discussion with white. I don't want to call them white supremacists, but I do want to say that there is a prevalence amongst certain white people to ignobilize black people based on assumptions. And they don't do this carte blanche, but they don't do this with an entirety of disregard. But they seem to retain, based on my interviews with business owners whom are white that talk about hiring practices and so forth, they seem to take things that are progressive, black cultural artifacts in dress and fashion, such as baggy pants or rap culture or rings or things that may be pervasive in what they think is a junk, derogatory portion of black culture that is moving through general expressions in black culture, and they're still reading that, even if they bump into, even if they're hiring very astute, well-educated black people whom have fashion senses that echo what they think are derogatory. To the white people hiring, the human resources people hiring black people, often will not separate off their previously held prejudices in the face of black culture rolling itself out into the mainstream. And so hopefully everything gets ironed out as far as the history of reparations. I think I have a welfare program more left of Sanders that should cover all of white trash, black trash, if you will, the description of the white nigger, the black nigger, the trashy part of society, the downtrodden, the disenfranchised, the people that hold a different type of paradigm, who do not care for education, do not care for engagement in our capital production. I think my welfare system that I can go into should help support these people as a proper segment of our citizenry, and that they should be helped as well. But I can go into that later. So as far as general race relationships, I hope it keeps feathering out. I hope it keeps getting ironed over. I know we have the first black president who's mulatto, so it's interesting that we call him black, but still enough of the phenotype of black to be considered black, and that this is not only an amazing thing, it also has ramifications as far as people's consideration of the black-white paradigm in the U.S.
Okay,
thanks.
We're at the end of the interview here. Are there any other issues you would like to discuss before we wrap it up?
Oh, well, and I apologize for all the time. By the way, I know that you're doing this on your time as well, and that I'm babbling very, very long with this. But yes, the most important thing, that the things that my platform, Mike Fahl, MikeFahl, and I'm on Facebook, the Campaign to Elect Me. My platform is about patent law reform and corporate law reform. I believe these are the two most important things that are on the table that are holding our country back. Patent law restructuring requires a rudimentary gutting of the patent law expiration dates from 20 years. I believe we need to reduce that to 15 years. After a patent goes public, it should fall into the public domain. Nobody or no corporation should be allowed to purchase the rights or the exclusive rights to that patent after 15 years. I believe patents, once they're invented, there should be a 2-year time to bring that patent towards capitalization. And as soon as the patent reaches capitalization, in terms of it being sold on the market, it would have a 15-year lifespan, in which time the rights could be traded or sold. But after that 15 years, that patent becomes public domain. Our government sequesters over 5,000 patents roughly a year and keeps them off the market and claims this is based on national security. Corporations buy patents and they sit on them for 20 years, energy patents, all sorts of patents. This needs to be reformed. There should be laws against sitting on patents. The government should go through, if I were so lucky to get in the administration, I would go through and be advised by advisors on which patents could possibly be released to bring our country into the technological future that is impending. As far as corporate law needs a direct accountability of hierarchy, a less acuteness in hierarchy, and a more obtuseness. And by this I mean that the CEO of a company, their income should be in direct ratio to that of their lowest paid individual. And this would be a hypothetical. But if we made it legal that a corporation that pays its lowest paid employee, let's say $7 an hour, that the CEO would not be able to make more than, let's say, $7 million a year. That this would function in direct ratio, and that if it moved up to $15 an hour as their lowest paid employee, then they could get $15 million a year. So as long as there is some sort of control of income disparity within all corporations, as we function internationally in trade, international law, international intellectual property and copyright law, intellectual property in general, and we incorporate it internationally, we need to make much more obtuse the current acuteness of the hierarchy, the pyramidic scheme. I'm using a geometry here that shows the distance between the bottom of the pyramid and the top of the pyramid. Sneferu's pyramid is a bent pyramid in Egypt. Look it up, Sneferu's pyramid. Compared to top,
but we're coming up on an hour here, and I really need to wrap this up. We've been going.
You need to wrap it up. Okay.
This has been going on for hours, so it's time to wrap it up.
I appreciate the rest of everything can be found on videos on my website. Lee, I appreciate your time doing this. I have no closing remarks other than I appreciate you doing the interview for me.
Okay, thank you for participating, and thanks again to my listeners for listening. Be sure to check back in the future for more interviews. Thanks again, Mr. Fahl.